Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello dear learners, welcome to the session of Managerial Economics. I am Dr. Supriya Jain, working as an assistant professor in the Institute of Business Management at GLA University, Mathura. So let's start with our today's lecture, and before we look at the topics what we are going to cover here, we will look at the headings which have been covered in our previous session. In the previous session we have talked about perfect competition, as this is the most idealistic form of market where we call it as in perfect competition. We have talked about the feature of this market, and we have seen a very important feature, like here in this market we have large number of buyers and seller. The product which they are selling are of homogeneous nature, that means they are same and similar to each other, and the firms working under perfect competition, they are the price taker. They take the prices from the market, and these prices are being determined based on demand and supply. Thereafter, we have talked about the important consideration of freedom to entry and exit. In this market, there is a freedom to entry, and any firm anytime can exit the market, and here the consumers have the perfect knowledge of the market regarding the price, regarding the quality of the product. So these were the features of perfect competitive market, and then thereafter we have talked about how we can determine the prices, right. So prices are basically being determined based on the interaction of these two market forces which are called as demand and supply. So the point where the demand and supply will be equal, that point will determine the prices. So whenever there will be a change taking place in the demand and the supply, then only the price will get affected, right. Then after this we have talked about the short run equilibrium, as because we have these two phases whenever we operate in any market situation, we have to understand how we are going to determine the price and output of any commodity in a short period as well as in the long run. So two things which we have studied here in the short run as well as in the long run. First, we need to understand that short run is a time frame which is not enough for us to change into a new situation. So for that, in short run we have some inputs which are of fixed nature which cannot be changed, and some inputs are of variable nature. So by making change only in the variable inputs, we can increase the size of the output. And most importantly, in the short run, as because we do not have enough time, so no new firm can enter into the market and no existing firm will be able to exit the market, because that also requires a considerable time. So because of that, the firms which are operating under the perfect competition, they can either earn supernormal profit, normal profit, or they might can incur a loss, right, or they are, some of the firms are actually incurring the loss, right. So these are the three cases which are there when the firms are operating under perfect competition in short run, right. Whereas if we talk about the long run consideration, we have seen that under perfect competition, the firms which are working, they will only earn normal profit, because in the long run we have all the inputs which are of variable nature, we can vary them and we can increase the size of the output. And secondly, we have seen that because we have enough time, so new players, if they want to enter into the market, they can easily enter, and existing firms who are incurring the losses, they can leave the industry, right. So the firms which are operating under the perfect competition will only earn normal profit. So these were the considerations which we have discussed regarding the perfect competitive market. Now in this lecture we are going to further discuss about price and output determination under monopoly as well as monopolistic competitive market. So let us look at the learning objective of this session. By the end of this session, you will be able to analyze the price and output decisions of a monopolist in short run as well as in the long run, right. How monopolist is going to determine, because he is a independent decision maker, he is the single player in the market, right, and the product which he is selling does not also have a substitute. So how a monopolist is going to determine the price and output in short run as well as in the long run. Secondly, you will also be able to explore the nuances of price discrimination. Price discrimination, as we have discussed, that it is here where monopolists can charge different prices for a same commodity from different consumers, right, depending upon the purpose for which they are using, depending upon the elasticities in the different market. So, here in this lecture we will also examine the nuances of price discrimination by the monopolist and the different degrees of such discrimination, how and when monopolist is going to determine the price and output relationship under this price discrimination. Then thereafter we will discuss and you will be able to analyze the price and output decisions of monopolistic competitive firm, the firms which are working under this market structure, right. How are they going to determine the price and output in the short run as well as in the long run. And lastly, you will be able to comprehend why a firm in a monopolistic competitive operate with the excess capacity. So, these will be your learning objective from our today's class. So, let us start with the monopoly, right. So, let me help you to recall once again which market is to be considered as an monopoly market and who is monopolist and what are the basic feature which we cover here. So, firstly we say that here in the monopoly market there is a single seller and the product is also single in the market because he is the only supplier, he sells that only product in the market, and there is no difference between the firm as well as industry, right, because he is the single seller and firm basically industry comprises of the firm dealing in a same product line. So, he is the single seller in the market, so you can either call it as an industry or you can treat it as a single firm. He is a price maker, he makes his own independent decision, the one who works under this monopoly market, right, because he determines himself at what price the product is going to be sold, how much output need to be produced. So, all that decisions are being taken up independently because there is no competition in this market. And why this monopoly power is there? Because of this restrictive entry. So, this is again a very important feature of this market, and because of this market only the person enjoy this power of monopoly, right, and entry can be restrictive or monopoly power can be gained through different reasons which we have already covered. And quickly we will move to the last heading where we are talking about price discrimination, right. So, price discrimination is again one thing which can be done by the monopolist, because being a single seller in the market he has a control over the supply, right, and he also is capable of dividing his market into two or more markets where different elasticities will be there, and based on the paying capacities of the consumer he can charge different prices. So, these are the features of monopoly markets, and now let us understand how we calculate the demand curve, right. So, before we talk about the price and output determination under this monopoly and monopolistic competitive market, we need to understand how we are going to understand the demand and marginal revenue curve for monopoly and monopolistic competition. So, if you look at the left side here, we have these graphs. The very first we are showing the revenue curve under the monopoly market, and we have this revenue curve under this monopolistic competitive market. So, one thing here I would like to make you recall, if you remember that in the perfect competition we have seen that the demand curve was horizontal line, right, where we say that the demand is perfectly elastic, right. In the perfect competitive market, when we have understood the graph, we have seen that demand under the perfect competitive market was perfectly elastic, and because of that reason demand curve is horizontal, or you can say parallel to the x axis. But when you talk about the monopoly, as because monopolist is the single seller in the market and he does not have a close substitute, so therefore the demand in the monopoly market is highly price inelastic, right. So, here the price the commodity is highly price inelastic, that means even if there is a change in the price, the demand quantity demanded does not get affected much. So, therefore, the demand curve for this monopoly market will be downward sloping. So, this AR curve is basically helping you to understand the demand curve, and since average revenue of the firm is declining as and when you are increasing the size of output, therefore, your marginal revenue curve will always below to your average revenue curve, and it will also be downward sloping. There in the case of perfect competition, we have drawn it this way. This was your demand curve where we have stated that OP is the price which we have taken in the, from the market, and PL is the demand curve for the perfect competitive market, because in that market the demand was perfectly elastic, right. So here this was our demand curve for perfect competitive market, right, and because our average revenue was constant, therefore average revenue and marginal revenue was also constant. But when we talk about monopoly market, and when we are saying here in this monopoly market, the demand is highly inelastic because there is no close substitute of the commodity. So even if the price increases, the demand decreases, but not much effect will be seen on the quantity demanded, right. Therefore the demand curve will slope downwards, right. Like moving towards this demand curve of monopolistic competitive market, here is also your demand curve downward sloping, but when we talk about the relativity of price and the quantity demanded under this monopolistic competitive market, and we say that here the product is highly price elastic, right, because here we have lot of substitutes available for the product, though there is a product differentiation and each firm has their own set of loyal customers also. But still, whenever there is a change taking place in the price of the commodities under this monopolistic competitive market, definitely people can shift their demand to the substitutes which are available, right. So here in this market, monopolistic competitive market, the demand is highly price elastic. So we can see here the difference between the demand curve in the monopoly as well as in the monopolistic competitive market. Both are downward sloping, but here the curve will be more steeper, right, because it represents that demand is highly price elastic. A lesser change in the price will cause more change in the quantity demanded. So why I have shown these curves together? Because of your better understanding, so that you will be able to understand how we are going to represent the demand curve for the monopoly as well as monopolistic competitive market. So again we can see that this is AR curve is your average revenue curve for the firm, because here the demand is highly price elastic, and because the average revenue curve is declining, right, as and when you are going to increase the size of your output, your average revenue of the firm will decrease, right. Same way the marginal revenue curve will also decrease and it will always be lesser than average revenue curve, right. So this is how we basically relates the demand curve under the different market. Now moving ahead, let us look at the price and output determination in short run under this monopoly market, right. So again we are going to discuss how the monopolist is going to determine the price and output relationship in the short run as well as in the long run. So again for your understanding of this short run, we can have this understanding that short run is a time frame where we have two inputs, fixed inputs as well as variable input. So again the monopolist, if he wants to increase the size of his operation, he can only make changes to the variable inputs in the short run, whereas fixed inputs will remain fixed, right. And another thing which we can see here for the monopolist, as there is a restrictive entry, right, no new firm can enter into this market and no existing firm can exit as well, because he is the singles player in the market. So this condition is not valid in the short run as well as in the long run, because in the monopoly market there is a restrictive entry. So the only thing which you need to understand here is short run is a time frame where we have fixed inputs as well as the variable inputs, and we can only make change in the variable inputs to increase the size of the output. So you can see here a monopolist, like a perfect competitive firm, try to maximize his profit. Definitely the objective of firms, whether they are working under the perfect competition or monopoly or monopolistic competitive market, they always want to increase their profit margin. So as we have seen that monopoly firm faces the downward sloping demand curve, keeping the price inelastic, highly inelastic, and the downward sloping curve implies that the larger output can be sold only by reducing the price, even if there is no substitutes available. But then also if a monopolist is keeping the reducing price strategies for his commodity, then definitely the margin of sales will be more, and then there also he would be able to generate more profit. So its marginal revenue curve will be below the average revenue curve, like we have seen, and the average cost curve will always be of U shape, right. and this is of U shape because we have seen that initially when we increase the size of our output, our average cost reduces and then thereafter it started increasing. So, it gives us the shape of U, right, and as we have seen the equilibrium point and we have calculated the equilibrium point under the perfect competitive market. Same way we are going to find out the equilibrium point, and we will get the equilibrium point where the marginal revenue curve will be equals to the marginal cost curve, and the marginal cost curve will cut the marginal revenue curve from below, right. So, here under this monopoly we have these kind of conditions again available to the monopolist firm, that there can be a situation of abnormal profit, loss as well as normal profit. So, how we are going to understand these curve? Let me help you to understand them. As you have already understood that how we are going to draw this average revenue and marginal revenue curve. Average revenue curve under this will be downward sloping, stating that the price is highly inelastic in the monopoly market. On the x axis we have output, and on the y axis we are representing cost, revenue as well as the profit, right. Below the average revenue curve we will show this marginal revenue curve, because it will also be declining as and when average revenue is reducing, and with this red color we are stating this marginal cost curve, right. Marginal cost is the cost of producing one additional unit, right. So, marginal cost curve is also of U shaped. Whenever we are increasing the size of our output, the initial cost will decrease and thereafter it started increases, right. And there is a formula to calculate the marginal cost, that is TCN minus TCN minus 1, right. So, this is how we calculate the marginal cost. So, here you can see we have already discussed that equilibrium point will be the point where the marginal cost will be equals to marginal revenue, and where the marginal cost curve will cut the marginal revenue curve from below. So, you can see this E point is the point of equilibrium under this monopoly market, because at this point marginal revenue is equals to the marginal cost, and marginal cost curve is cutting this marginal revenue curve from below, right. So, this is the equilibrium point, and this equilibrium point will help us to find out how much output monopolist should produce so that he would be able to optimize the cost, right. So, here OQ output should be produced by a monopolist firm, so that the monopolist will be able to reach the equilibrium. Now, as we know, we have three situations where the firm can earn supernormal profit, or it can be also called as abnormal profit or loss, and this represents the condition of normal profit. So, abnormal profit will be earned when the average revenue of the firm will be greater than the average cost, right. If the firm is having average revenue greater than the cost, then it will state the condition of abnormal profit. When the average revenue is lesser than the average cost, then we have this loss situation, and when the average revenue of the firm is equals to the average cost, then the firm will be under this normal profit condition. Okay. So, here with the help of average cost curve, you will be able to identify whether the firm is earning abnormal profit, normal profit, or they are incurring the loss, right. So, here with this line we are representing this average cost curve, and you can see to produce OQ output the firm is incurring the revenue which is BQ, right. So, a revenue of the firm is BQ. This line starting from B point to the Q point, this is the revenue of the firm which they are earning, and the cost, if we talk about cost, is AQ. Up to this point we are calculating the cost. So, average cost of the firm is AQ and average revenue of the firm is the BQ, and we can easily see that the revenue is more than the cost. So, the difference between revenue and the cost is the profit, right. So, this BA area is the profit per unit, and when we calculate the total profit of the firm, we multiply this per unit profit with the total output. So, we can say that this ABPC, this area is your abnormal profit which a monopolist firm is earning, right. So, this is how we represent this abnormal profit condition. Now, looking at the situation of loss, you can see that now we are going to draw this average cost curve above to the average revenue curve, because here to represent the condition of loss, your average cost is more than the average revenue. So, again if we talk about this equilibrium point, we have calculated it with the help of marginal cost curve, right, and the point where marginal cost is equals to the marginal revenue, and the marginal cost curve is cutting your marginal revenue from curve from below. So, that point would be called as equilibrium point, and OQ is the output which a firm is going to produce, right, and to produce this output the revenue is AQ, right. Again the revenue for the firm is AQ, but now you can see the cost to produce this output is BQ, right. So, this is the cost, BQ is basically the average cost here, and average revenue is AQ, right. So, this is the average revenue, and we can see that the cost is more than the revenue. So, when we have cost more than the revenue, then it represents the situation of loss, right, where average revenue is lesser than the average cost. And now this is the condition for normal profit. You can see here again we have calculated this equilibrium point with the help of marginal cost curve, and this is the point with this AQ. AQ is the average revenue of the firm and AQ is the average cost of the firm. So, here the average revenue is equals to the average cost, because the amount which we are incurring on the production of this much of commodity or the quantity of the product is equals to the revenue which a firm is able to produce. So, this represents the situation of normal profit. Now, the question comes, does a monopolist firm only earn supernormal profit? Since we have seen the feature of this monopoly firm, that this is a situation where there is a single seller, there is a single product, and he also has a consideration of price discrimination, where a monopolist can charge different prices from the different commodities, and this firm does not have a close substitute also. So, looking at the features which we have studied about this monopoly firm usually indicates that the firm working under the monopoly market will earn supernormal profit, but that situation is not true in real sense. Though it is possible, there is a possibility of more that firm will earn supernormal profit, but it might be possible that monopoly firm can also incur a loss. So, there is no certainty that the monopoly will always earn a economic or supernormal profit, keeping the features into consideration. If a monopoly firms operate at the level of output MR is equals to MC, right. So, its profit depends upon the relative level of average revenue and average cost. So, it might be possible for the monopolist also that this monopolist firm can earn supernormal profit, or it can only earn normal profit, or it can also make a loss, though this is a theoretical concept, but that again it is possibility if the firm is not getting its operations right based on the economic consideration, then it might also be possible that a monopolist firm can incur a loss. And we have just seen the situation how we are going to calculate this abnormal profit, supernormal profit, which is also called as normal profit, as well as the loss, right. So, I hope this short run consideration of monopoly market is clear to every one of us, where we have seen that monopoly market is the market where there is a single product and a single seller does not have a close substitute of that commodity, right, and the firms operating under monopoly market in the short run usually earn supernormal profit, but that depends upon the monopolist up to which point they are producing and how the demand is there in the market. Accordingly, there can be the situation of normal profit, or it might can incur a loss, right. So, moving ahead, let us look at the price and output determination in long run, right. So, if we talk about this long run consideration of monopoly market, there is not much difference between the short run and the long run, because the situations will almost be the same. The only difference here in the long run will be, now a monopolist firm can also make change to those factors which were fixed in the short run, right, because of the short time frame. There were inputs which a monopolist were not able to change because of their lesser time frame, but now as because we are talking about the long run, the inputs which were fixed in the short run, now they can be changed to change the size of the output, right. And it is not important for the monopolist, as he is the independent decision maker regarding the price, regarding the output, right, and no other firm is operating, he is the single seller. So, it is not always important for the monopolist to produce up to the equilibrium point, right. Monopolist can stop the production at any point where he can find out more profit, where he will be able to see the demand in the market. So, it is not that important for the monopolist firm to be to operate in this equilibrium point only, right, or up to that point where this firm is going to get the equilibrium, right. So, the rules regarding the optimal output and the pricing in the long run are same as in the short run, and as we know in this market there is a restrictive entry, right. No new firm can enter and no existing firm can exit, neither in the short run nor in the long run, right. So, the firm operating under this monopoly market can earn abnormal profit, normal profit, and there can be a possibility that they can also incur a loss, but usually because of these features which we have discussed, monopolist firm usually earn abnormal profit. So, in long run monopolists get the opportunity to expand the size of its firm and to maximize its long run profit, and in the absence of competition monopolists need not to produce, like I said, right, because there is no competition in this market. So, the monopolist need not to produce at the optimum level, he can produce also up to the suboptimal level, depends upon the return which a monopolist is going to get. So, in other words, he need not to reach the minimum of LAC curve, he can stop at any place where the profits are maximum, right. He has the capacity of increasing the price of the commodity. So, the monopolist is not focused on producing up to the point where the cost is minimum. Because of the other competitions in the market, like in perfect competition there is a price rigidity, right, rather I should say under the perfect competitive market the firms are the price taker, right, they cannot increase the price of their commodity. So, their focus was on reducing the cost, because that is the only thing which they can focus upon. The more they are able to reduce their cost, the higher will be their profit margin. Same is the case of monopolistic competitive market. Though the the players under this monopolistic competitive market are the price maker, but still they have lot of substitutes available for their commodity. So, again they need to produce up to the optimum point of where the cost of production will be minimum, so that they can get better returns on their product, right. Though there is no price competition, the competition is based on their product differentiation. But here in the case of monopoly, being a single seller and there is no competition in the market, so monopolist does not have to work up to the optimum point. This firm can also work up to the suboptimum level where the firm is able to maximize the profits, right. So, this is all about this monopoly, how monopoly market works and how this price and output determination are being taken up in short run as well as in the long run. So, this thing which we need to understand here is once again that under the monopoly firm, though there are firms who usually earn abnormal profit, but it is not the ideal situation. That might be a possibility that the firms operating under this monopoly market can also earn normal profit, or there can be a possibility of loss as well, right. So, now let us move ahead and look at the important feature which we have discussed under this monopoly market, that is price discrimination, right. And in our previous lecture we have also seen the basis on which the monopolist can discriminate among the prices of a same commodity to different consumer. So, in short we can say that price discrimination is an art, right. It is an art of selling the same commodity produced under a single control to different buyers at different prices. So, how a monopolist is selling the commodity, same commodity to different people at different prices, that is what is being called as price discrimination. And to make it possible, there are certain conditions. If these conditions are being satisfied, then only a monopolist will be able to charge different prices for the same commodity. The first point says that a seller should have control over the supply of his product, right. A person who wants to discriminate among the prices of a commodity should have a control over the supply, right. And as we know that monopolist is the single seller in the market, so he can control the supply as and when he wants, because nobody else is there to supply that commodity other than him, right. So, he has a full control over the market. So, this is possible under this market only, and that is why we are studying it under the feature of monopoly. So, one thing is one should have a control over the supply of the commodity. Secondly, a seller should be able to divide his market into 2 or more sub market, right. In the same market you cannot sell a same commodity at different prices. So, in that case a seller has to divide his market into 2 or more sub market. And third point says that the price elasticity of the product should be different in the different market, right. If the price elasticity will be same, then definitely it will be difficult. But yes, if these different markets, they have different price elasticity, and we have seen that there is a different impact of prices on different commodities, right. So, if there will be different elasticities only, then only you will be able to charge different prices. So, first thing which we are saying here is one should have a control over the supply. Secondly, a seller should be able to divide the market into 2 or more sub market. And third point says that in these different markets price elasticities should be different. And lastly, we are saying that it should not be possible for the buyer to buy from the low price market and sell it to the high price market. Suppose we have divided the market into A and B, right, and we have seen that the elasticity of price in market A is inelastic, right. Product is of inelastic nature in market A, and maybe we can say the product is of elastic nature in market B. So, what we are going to do, definitely we can charge higher prices in market A because the price is inelastic, and here in market B we have to keep lower prices because the product is inelastic, of elastic nature. So, one thing what we are saying here is, if we are selling the product on a lesser price in the market B and we are selling the product on higher prices in market A, then there should not be any other person who can purchase it from the market B and can sell it to the market A other than you, because you should have a control over the supply. Because if somebody else has started doing that, right, purchasing the product from market B at lower price and started selling it to the market A at higher prices, then definitely you will lose the control, and once you will lose the control over the supply, you will not be able to charge different prices for the same commodity. So, these are the necessary conditions to be satisfied, then only this price discrimination is possible. Now, we are going to understand how prices and output are going to be determined. Since we are talking about price discrimination and we are saying that monopolist has to divide the market into 2 or more sub market, and these different markets should have different elasticities. So, how this monopolist is going to determine how much output should be sold in market A and how much output should be sold in market B, and what should be the price in market A and what should be the price in market B. Though we have known the elasticities of the market, but what exact price and output should be sold in those market, for that we need to understand this price and output determination under price discrimination. So, here in this you can see we have 3 charts. This one is your market A, right, and this market is basically representing that this market is of inelastic nature. You can look at the graph which will help you to understand. This is the downward sloping demand curve, right, but here you can see the demand curve is more steeper, right, which state that market B is of elastic nature, because a lesser change in the price will cause more change in the quantity demanded. And here, being this market is of inelastic nature, one can charge higher prices, even then there will be a lesser change on the quantity demanded. And this total market represents your market A as well as market B, right. So, how are we going to understand? Since there is a single firm, right, so basically all calculations we are going to make here. The marginal cost we will draw in this particular graph, because ultimately the production is going to take place in a single firm, and this production which we are making under the single firm are going to be distributed in the different markets based on the different elasticity. So, here you can see on the x axis we have quantity, market A is represented by M1, market B is representing here M2, and total market demand we are representing with M, right. So, here we have seen this average revenue curve. This is the demand for the market A, which is downward sloping, and below this will be your marginal revenue curve. So, this is the demand for market A and this is the marginal revenue curve of market A. Same is the case for market B. This is the average revenue curve for the market B, which represents with DB, that is the demand in the market B, and this is steeper downward sloping curve represent that demand in this market is of elastic nature, right. And below to this lies your marginal revenue of market B. Now, looking at the total market curves, here this up to this point we are representing that the market is of inelastic nature. So, here we are going to draw this downward sloping curve, and this steeper sloping curve represents the demand for the market B. So, here in this market we are combining the demand of market A and market B, and that is why the first portion represents the demand is of inelastic nature, and the second portion represents the demand for the market B, which is of elastic nature. So, same will be our average revenue curve also. Here average revenue marginal curve, this represents the marginal revenue of market A, and this represents the marginal revenue of market B, right. And when we draw this marginal cost curve, because the production is taking at a single unit under the single seller rather, right. So, here with the help of this marginal cost curve we have calculated this equilibrium point, right, and we all know equilibrium point is the point where the marginal revenue and the marginal cost curves are equal, and where the marginal cost curve will cut the marginal revenue curve from below, right. So, here we will receive this equilibrium point, and what we will do now here is, from this equilibrium point we are going to draw the straight line towards the market A and market B. So, this is the line which we have drawn towards the market A and market B to find out the equilibrium point in the market A as well as in market B. So, here in this market we got this equilibrium point at E1, and in market 2 we are getting this equilibrium point at E2, right. So, the output can be easily determined that this is OM1 will be the output we are going to sell in market A, and OM2 is the output which we will sell in the market B, and this is the total output which we are going to produce, that is OM, right. So, for the total production we are making under this monopoly, how we are going to distribute this in the market A and market B, that determination we are making with the help of this graphs, right. So, we have received these equilibrium point, the output is clear, and now as we are saying this is an inelastic market. So, OP is the price which we are charging for selling the quantity, that is OQ1, and in market B being elastic in nature, here we are keeping the lesser price. You can see the price in the market A is comparatively higher because the nature of this market is inelastic, right. So, we will sell the commodity at higher prices and we will sell the lesser output here, whereas being a nature of elastic, right. So, here in the market B we are going to sell the more commodity or more output of the commodity at the lesser price, that is P2, right. So, this is how we basically determine the price and output under the price discrimination, and which is only possible when a seller has a control over the supply, when a seller is capable of dividing the market into 2 or more markets, and the elasticity in the market should be different, and it should not be possible for any buyer to buy from the low price market and sell it to a high price market, right. So, these are the necessary conditions which need to be satisfied before a seller goes for the price discrimination. And because the production is being taken up within a unit, and how this monopolist is going to determine at what price the commodity should be sold in a market A, what should be the quantity and what price they are going to keep for the product in market B, and what should be the quantity they will be selling. So, this is how we determine that. I hope it is clear to every one of you. Now, let us move to the next part where we are going to understand the managerial implication of monopoly, right. We have understood about this monopoly market, and we have also seen how we are going to determine the price and output relationship in the short run as well as in the long run. We have also talked about price discrimination in detail, what are the necessary conditions should be there, and how the prices and outputs are being determined. But when we look at the managerial implication of this market, then the firm should take care of certain things. That is the first point we are saying here. Being a single seller, firm should not charge the higher price, because sometimes monopolists feel that he can charge higher prices for the commodities because the product does not have any substitute. That it should not be the mind frame. A firm should not charge the higher prices, but should charge the right price, right. So, right price is the one that maximize the profit, where the marginal revenue is equals to the marginal cost. So, firm should keep into consideration that they should be charging the right price rather than charging the higher price for their commodity, because if they will be charging the right price, there will be more sale for their commodity, which will help them to increase their profit margin. Secondly, a monopolist firm must be aware of the possibility of competition in the various form, right. as we know, he is the single seller, that is true. So, secondly, we are saying that even a manager of a monopoly firm should be ready for the possibility of competition. Though we have seen that under this market there is a restrictive entry, but you never know in any other firm if any new firm will enter into this area. So, a monopolist should not keep that thing in the mind that he is the single seller in the market and there will not be any competition which he is going to face. There can be a possibility, and so the manager of this firm need to make himself ready for the same. The third point says that the firms have the government sanctioned monopoly, right, cannot assume that this protection will last forever, right, as we are seeing these changes also. Earlier the electricity was with the government only, but now we are seeing that this has also been transferred to the private organization. So, gradually there might be a shift which can be possible, right. So, even the firms which are enjoying the power of monopoly because of the government have sanctioned them this monopoly power, they should also be keeping themselves ready. It might be possible that their sanctions which is being given to them might shift to the private owners. Okay. Lastly, we are saying with the growing globalization, companies enjoying the monopoly in the domestic market, maybe the companies who are enjoying the monopoly power in the domestic market, they also need to keep themselves ready because of the globalization. You never know, the firms in the other countries can give them the competition. So, for the monopolist, we are saying a manager should keep two things into the mind. The first is they should be charging the right price if they want to increase their profit margin, and secondly, we are saying they should keep themselves ready for the competition. Even if they are the single seller in the market, they should be keeping that into mind that they never know when and from where they can face this competition. So, this is all about monopoly market. Now, let us move to the understanding of monopolistic competition, right, because monopolistic competitive market is the market where we have the combination of both perfect competition as well as monopoly, right. Each firm has certain kind of a monopoly because they have a certain set of loyal customers for their product, but because there are a lot of substitutes available in the market, so at the same time they are facing lot of competition. So, this monopolistic competitive market has these features like there are large number of buyers and seller for sure, but the product which they are selling here are of heterogeneous nature, right. There is a product differentiation and all the competition which they are making with each other, that is based on the product, right, that is based on the commodity which they are producing, right. Here the selling cost plays a very important role because the players working under this monopolistic competitive market, they spend lot of money on the advertisement, right, so that they can advertise that their product is better from the competitors, right, and they can attract more and more customers for their product. Okay. So, selling cost, as we know, advertising cost no producers pays from their pocket, they add it to the price of the commodity. So, that will increase the selling cost of the commodity. Here under this monopolistic competitive market, the players are the independent decision makers, and here the consumers have imperfect knowledge, right, like the consumers were having perfect knowledge in the perfect competitive market. That is not true in the case of monopolistic competitive market. The consumer does not have a perfect knowledge, and because of that reason they might be charged higher prices by where the seller can say that their product is better than the others. Okay. And in this market we have unrestricted entry and exit, any new firm can enter and any existing firm can exit from this market. Now, here once again for your remembrance, I have shown this demand curve which represent that the demand under this monopolistic competitive market is highly elastic. Right. So, here the demand curve will be steeper, it will again be a downward sloping demand curve stating that the lesser the price, higher the demand, but here the price is highly elastic because of the reason we have lot of competitors there in the market, right, and this is representing the average revenue curve of the firm with the red line, and because the average revenue average revenue curve of the firm is declining, right, and it keeps on decreasing. So, below this lies our marginal revenue curve which is also downward sloping, right. Now, looking further, we have the determination of equilibrium price and output under the monopolistic competition in the short run. So, how are we going to determine the price and output under this monopolistic competitive firm in short run? So, again we have this short run consideration where you need to understand In short run, we have two inputs, right, two types of input rather I should say. Some inputs are of fixed nature and some inputs are of variable nature. So, to increase the size of output in the short run, we can make a change only in the variable inputs and fixed inputs will remain fixed. And another important thing which you need to understand here is, as because in this market there is a freedom to enter and to exit, but because of the time frame in the short run, no new firm is able to enter and no existing firm will be able to exit from the market. The condition will remain same, the conditions which we have studied under the perfect competition. So, you can look at the characteristic of both these market, because under this perfect competitive market also there was a freedom of entry and exit, and under this monopolistic competitive market also there is a freedom of entry and exit, right. So, in short run, because of the shorter time frame, no firm can enter and no existing firm can exit. Therefore, we say that the firms operating under monopolistic competitive market in short run, some of them are earning abnormal profit, some of the firm will earn normal profit, or some of the firm are operating at loss also, right. So, monopolistic competitive firm will come to an equilibrium point, or come to equilibrium on the principle of equalizing marginal revenue with marginal cost. So, again here we will find out the equilibrium point where the marginal revenue of the firm will be equal to the marginal cost, and under this monopolistic competitive, the shape of the demand curve, that is the average revenue curve, is flatter, right. The demand curve in monopoly market is steeper, and here in the monopolistic competitive market the demand curve is flatter, right, which represent the demand is highly elastic. So, price elasticity will be high, and therefore, the marginal revenue curve will also be a flatter curve, and each firm will choose that price and output where it will be maximizing the profit. So, figure which we are going to understand here is representing the case of supernormal profit under this monopolistic competitive market. So, to make you understand clearly, on the x axis we are representing the output here, and on the y axis we have revenue, cost and price, right. So, this line which is shown here with average revenue curve is the demand curve of the firm, representing that the demand is highly elastic, and that is why the demand curve is flatter in case of monopolistic competition, whereas in case of monopoly the demand curve was steeper, representing the demand is highly inelastic, right. And as we can see, there is a average revenue curve is decreasing, right, it is not constant. So, below average revenue our marginal revenue curve will be there, and with the help of marginal cost curve, which is your again of U shaped, we are going to calculate this equilibrium point. So, here we are getting this equilibrium representing with this E. Here we have marginal revenue which is equals to the marginal cost, and our marginal cost curve is cutting the marginal revenue curve from below. So, this is the output which is to be produced by the monopolist to reach up to the equilibrium point. And as we are representing the case of supernormal profit, so what we will do in case of supernormal profit, your average revenue will be greater than average cost. So, this is your average revenue curve. So, what we will do, we will draw this average cost curve below to the average revenue curve, and we can easily see to produce OQ output, the average revenue of the firm is SQ. This is the average revenue of the firm, whereas the average cost of the firm is the TQ, right. So, SQ is the average revenue and TQ is the average cost, and the revenue is greater than the cost, and when we deduct cost from the revenue we get the profit. So, ST is basically the profit of the firm, which is the per unit profit, and when we multiply this per unit profit with the total output, we would be able to get this total supernormal profit or the abnormal profit which a firm is incurring in the under this monopolistic competitive market, right. So, this is the case of supernormal profit. Likewise, we can also understand how a monopolistic competitive firm can earn normal profit, or it can incur a loss as well, right. So, these are the three conditions, or you can say these will be the three cases which will be there for the firms operating under the monopolistic competitive market in the short run. Some of them are earning supernormal profit, some of them can earn abnormal profit, or some of them might be earning loss, right. Let us move to the explanation we have already done, and I have also explained you that if the average revenue of the firm is more, then the firm is earning supernormal profit, as we have seen in the figure, where the average revenue of the firm is equal to the average cost, then the firm will be earning only normal profit, and when the average revenue is lesser than the average cost, then the firm will be making loss, right. So, how to represent the graph of abnormal profit, normal profit and loss? See, we have this abnormal profit graph and we have normal profit, and we can also have a loss for the firms operating in the monopolistic competitive market. To represent it more clearly, we have also already seen the graph for abnormal profit, and this is how we draw this average revenue curve for the firm and operating under monopolistic competitive market, which represent the curve is flatter, and below to this lies your marginal revenue curve, right. So, with the help of marginal cost curve, we usually calculate the equilibrium point. This is the x axis and y axis, and we know that on y axis we represent revenue, cost and price, and here on the x axis we are representing the quantity, that is the output, right. So, this is the case of abnormal profit. So, what we will do? We will draw the average cost curve below the average revenue curve, right. So, this is the average revenue of the firm for operating this OQ output, and this will be the cost. So, this is your profit per unit, and this is how you calculate the supernormal profit or the total profit of the firm. Whereas, when you talk about the normal profit, what you will do? This average cost curve will touch your average revenue curve. This is the average revenue, this is the marginal revenue curve, right. From below, the marginal cost curve is cutting your marginal revenue, which gives you the equilibrium point, and OQ is the output which you will produce, right. And to produce this much of output, you need to calculate the cost. Since we are talking about normal profit, so here when you will draw the average cost curve, it basically touches your average revenue curve. So, you can see to produce OQ output, suppose this is the F point. So, FQ is the revenue and FQ is the cost as well. So, here the cost and revenue is equal, which states that this is the condition of the firm which is earning normal profit only, right. And when you are going to represent the loss, let me help you to understand it once again, right. So, here what we will do to represent the loss condition, we will draw this average cost curve above to this average revenue curve, right. So, again you can see for producing OQ output, this FQ is the revenue and you can say CQ is the cost. So, cost is more than the revenue. So, the difference between the cost and revenue is the loss of the firm, and this is the loss which is per unit loss. So, when we multiply this per unit loss with the total output, we would be able to get the total loss of the firm, right. So, this is how we basically show the conditions of abnormal profit, normal profit and loss under the monopolistic competitive market, and the firms operating under the monopolistic competitive market in the short run can either earn supernormal profit or there are the firms which are earning supernormal profit, there are the firms which are earning normal profit, and there are the firms which are earning losses also. Now, if you look at the long run consideration, we can see that price output determination of a monopolistic competitive firm in the long run, right. Again, in the long run, we have seen that there is no fixed input. All the inputs are of variable nature. So, we can make changes to these variable input to change the output of the firm, right. And the firms operating under this perfect competition, under this monopolistic competitive market in the short run will only earn normal profit, right. Because again in this market we have this freedom of entry and exit, right. So, the firms which were incurring the loss in the short run will reduce their output or they will leave the industry, and the firms which were incurring the or earning the abnormal profit in the short run will increase their output or they will attract new firm to the market, right. So, the firms operating under the monopolistic competitive market in the long run will only earn normal profit, right. So, there will be no supernormal profit conditions and the loss condition in the long run, the firms will only earn normal profit, right. So, I hope the reason is clear to every one of you, which is same which we have discussed under the perfect competition. Now, to make all the three conditions clear to all, let me show you how we are going to understand it. Suppose we have this for the perfect competition, we have monopoly market which we have discussed, and we have talked about monopolistic competitive market, and in each market we are trying to determine the price and output in the short run as well as in the long run, right. So, these are the two time frames we have in all the three markets. So, first you need to understand the demand curve. For the perfect competitive market, the demand curve is perfectly elastic. So, this is how we represent the demand curve for the perfect competitive market. This OP is the price which we take from the market, and this PL line represents the average revenue of the firm, and because the average revenue of the firm is the constant, your marginal revenue will also be constant. So, this PL line represents the average revenue as well as marginal revenue curve. Whereas, for the monopoly market, as we know that the price is highly inelastic. So, therefore, here your demand curve will be downward sloping, but it will be steeper, right. So, this represents the average revenue curve of monopoly firm, and below this lies your marginal revenue firm. Whereas, in case of monopolistic competitive market, as we know that the demand is highly elastic in nature, therefore, the demand curve for the monopolistic market will also be downward sloping, but it will be flatter, right. This represents the average revenue curve, and below to this lies the marginal revenue curve of the firm. Right. Now, looking at the conditions, as we are talking about short run, in short run we have fixed inputs and we have variable inputs. Same is the case in the monopoly, we will have fixed inputs and some of the inputs are of variable nature. So, there will be variable inputs. Again, in the monopolistic competitive market, we have fixed inputs and variable inputs. So, these firms can only increase their variable inputs to increase the size of output in the short run, right. Another thing which we need to understand here, in the perfect competition, no new firm will be able to enter and exit because of the shorter time frame. So, here again in the short run, restrictive entry and exit, right. Monopoly is the market which is where there is a restrictive entry, no new firm can enter neither in the short run nor in the long run. So, again here is a restrictive entry and exit, right. And in the monopolistic competitive market, again in the short run there is a restrictive entry and exit because of the time frame, not because of the market feature. Because of the time frame, no firm is able to enter and no existing firm is able to exit. So, what we are saying here is firms operating under perfect competitive market in short run can earn supernormal profit. They might some of the firms are earning normal profit, or some of the firms are also incurring the loss, right. In the monopoly market also possibilities are more of supernormal profit, but there can be a situation where the firm is earning only normal profit, or it might can incur a loss as well, right. And in the monopolistic competitive market also, the firms operating here are earning supernormal profit, normal profit, and some of the firms are also running into losses, right. But when we talk about long run consideration of these market, here we have no fixed inputs, all the inputs are of your variable nature. So, in all the three markets, input will be of variable nature, and here in this long run perfect competitive market, there will be a freedom of entry and exit. Now, there is a freedom of entry and exit in the perfect competitive market, but again you can see in monopoly in long run there is again restrictive entry and exit, whereas in monopolistic competitive market there is a freedom of entry and exit. So, the firms operating under this perfect competition in the long run will only earn normal profit. There will be no firm which will be earning supernormal profit or will be incurring a loss, and this happens because the firms which were earning supernormal profit, they will increase their existing capacity and will attract new suppliers to the market, which will increase the demand of factors of production, which will increase the cost of production, and they will reach up to the point where they will be reaching to the normal profit only, right, where their average revenue will be equals to the average cost, right. Whereas, in case of monopoly, there is a restrictive entry. So, here the firm can earn supernormal profit, normal profit, or monopoly of a firm can also earn loss in the long run. But though this is a theoretical concept, there are very less possibilities of earning losses for the monopoly firm, but there can be any three situations, right. Whereas, in case of monopolistic competitive firms operating in the long run will only earn normal profit, right, and the situation will be same as in the case of perfect competition. So, this is how we determine the price and output under different market conditions. I hope the considerations are clear to every one of you, how we are going to determine them in the short run as well as in the long run. Now, looking at the managerial implication of this monopolistic competitive market, Now, the firms who are operating under this monopolistic competitive market, what are the things they need to keep into consideration? The first point says that they must be the first into the market through differentiation, right. So, they will be getting an advantage if they are the first mover advantage, rather I should say, okay. If they are entering first into the market with those kind of differentiation in their product, they would be able to grab more and more profit through their brand names, packaging, advertising as well as location. The managers of the early entrants must not sit easy, right, because you never know, this is the market where there is a freedom to entry. So, any new firm can enter to the market. So, they should not keep themselves easy, right. They should always be looking to grab supernormal profit who are already in the market. The another thing is, a manager must realize that a monopolistic market competition market offers the opportunity to the firm to compete not only by trying to the lowest cost producer, but also by effectively differentiating their product. Yes, as we have already discussed here, in this market the competition is not on the basis of the prices, the competition is on the basis of the differentiation in the product. So, if they are able to give that kind of product to the customer where the customer is ready to pay more prices, then definitely they can charge higher prices, but they should be providing that kind of product where they would be able to sell it at the higher price. And lastly, we are saying that the managers in the monopolistic competitive market need not have to keep the lower prices because of the competition, as long as he successfully makes the customer believes that he is supplying the best product out of all competitors. So, here a manager has to create a brand, because if the branding is there in the market, customers are ready to pay the higher prices, right, as long as they believe that the product provided by the company is of good quality, right. So, these are the managerial implication for the monopolistic competitive firm. What are the things a manager has to keep into consideration? Now, if we look at the topics what we have covered in our today's session, we have talked about monopoly market and how monopoly market is going to determine the price and output under short run as well as in the long run. Thereafter, we have talked about monopolistic competitive market, and we have seen how monopolistic competitive market is going to determine their price and output relationship in the short run as well as in the long run. So, this is all for our today's class, and these are some reference books taken for this lecture. I hope all of you have understood it well. Thank you all of you.